Good afternoon. You know, we put this thing off a few weeks so we get rid of all this. On behalf of our family, thank you for being here to share respect and love for Dad and our family. It's really actually interesting that we're all here because Dad actually didn't want a service. It was a fairly short discussion. So here we are. Thank you again. Over the next hour or so, we hope to simply share Dad's life through photos, through friends, through family. Dad's first words, his first reaction when presented in January with the final diagnosis: God has been in control my whole life. I trust his plan. There's no sense in changing that now. Dad was simple in so many ways, yet reflective and insightful, as expressed through his teaching, his counseling, along with his shelf of journals that we've enjoyed. He was a teacher, but more often he was a listener. While many of us were giving opinions and going on and on about what we knew about a subject, he seemed to be able to take it all in. And then when we were all done, speak in pretty much simple words of wisdom, the things that we had been going on and on about. He had the mindset to take the complex and make it really pretty simple. As we watch this 12-minute synopsis of his life, then listen to the man who became his best friend over the past 50 years, followed by family members. I encourage all of us to listen, to be reflective, to remember his influence in our lives and what was important to him. Thank you for being here today.
When I die, there won't be much to salvage from my earnings. I never had a lot of land or houses to my name. I've never been a corporate prince on Madison in New York. I've never held a diamond in my hand, but I've seen children laughing as only children can, and I've known my Creator, and I've been a happy man. I've never really loved the way I saw it in the movies, but I had myself a woman of my own. The place we lived was modest, and we kept the yard together. I never traveled far from my hometown, but I've heard music playing that made me understand the hearts of heaven, and I've been a happy man. Life has had its hard times when I felt the chill of winter. I can't forget the night when my sweet Julie slipped away. But growing old was different than I always thought it would be. The sweetness of my youth just grew with age. 'Cause I've known wealth and beauty beneath his guiding hand, and knowing soon I'll see him has made me a happy man. And knowing soon I'll see him has made me a happy man. the journey of the narrow road, and those who've gone before us line the way, cheering on the faithful, encouraging the weary, their lives a stirring testament to God's sustaining grace. Surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run the race not only for the prize, but as those who've gone before us, let us leave to those behind us the heritage of faithfulness passed on through godly love. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. After all our hopes and dreams have come and gone, and our children sift through all we've left behind, may the clues that they discover and the memories they uncover become the light that leads them to the road we each must find. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful.
Wow, my friend. It's an honor to be here representing a special friend, not only of Don, but the entire Shaffer family. We first met here, Rose Drive Friends Church, back in 1963, which puts us about 54 years of friendship. That's a long time, a lot of accomplished. He was one of the founding fathers of Rose Drive Friends Church, came over from Yorba Linda Friends, and he also was one of the charter members. So Don goes back a long way, and I, who stand before you, go back a long way with him. He loved to move furniture. The reason was because it was cheaper than buying a new home to match the old furniture. Quote, he liked to be well dressed, but he did not like to buy clothes. He had his favorite eating places. I will list them for you. I don't think you'll be surprised after watching. He had his favorites. I will list them, not necessarily in ascending or descending order. For special events, such as today, Fuddruckers, hamburger with optional add-ons over on Beach Boulevard. For regular food, what he called regular food, Polly's Pies, where he would order a Polly burger followed by the pie of the day, which he usually took home. For health food, he went to a Der Wiener Schnitzel, chili dog with everything you could get on it. If he really wanted good food, his quote, he stayed home and, where are you, Pat? Running to eat Pat's good cooking. So he called you Patsy. He was not afraid to critique things. In fact, he critiqued quite often. But he was never in the silence of admitting when he made a mistake or he was wrong. He had his opinions, which he said were free and negotiable. He had his convictions about which he felt very strongly. He had his non-negotiables, which were just that, non-negotiable. A couple of years ago, he informed me that he had quit giving up opinions, followed immediately by the statement, in my opinion, the Angels should sell all players but number 27, Mike Trout, and start all over again. He frequently called me during USC football games, halftime, anytime that he thought was appropriate to give me his opinion. On one particular occasion, USC was playing Notre Dame and they were behind at halftime about 24-0. I got the call and his opinion was USC should have gone down to Huntington Beach and played co-ed volleyball so that they get some fresh air because they stunk up the Coliseum. Speaking of football, something I didn't know because I wasn't around when he was playing football, he was a star running back. They called them halfbacks in those days, T formation. And he's also a star defensive back in high school. Later went on to play football at the college level. The occasion that I am remembering right now that I think is appropriate, he was playing football back in Pryor, Oklahoma, where he went with his family for about 6 or so years. He was 15 to 16 years old. The play commenced. In the middle of the play, someone shouted out to the opposing team, "He bit me! He bit me!" Well, I understand Don never fessed up to that. But about 6 months ago, the Shaffer boys, who also were on the team and on the field at that point, used to talk about that particular play. I asked Don about 6 months ago, Don, Did you really bite him? Silence from the other side. More silence. Then a smile came across his face, and a bigger smile. And he said, yes, but I hadn't planned on doing it. Quote. Moving on with his life. During World War II, Don was the age where all of the last great generation were joining in the battle. Don joined the United States Navy, where he became a torpedo bombing aviation pilot, which included landing and taking off on a moving aircraft carrier. He became a commissioned officer and was promoted from ensign to Lieutenant JG the day before Japan surrendered. Family humor and mythology concluded that the Japanese surrendered when they learned Don, and his torpedo bomber were entering the South Pacific campaign. In 1950, Don signed a contract. I'm going to have to pick this up because of my sightedness. Signed a contract to teach a 4th grade class with the Placentia Yorba Linda School District. He eventually taught in the upper elementary grades, middle school, which used to be called junior high, and high school, where he taught United States history. He also coached football, basketball, and the swim team at Valencia High School. In 1964, the superintendent of schools asked if he would be willing to extend his education and become a high school counselor. He returned to college and earned a pupil personnel credential from Pepperdine University. He later transferred to Esperanza High School as a counselor. He retired from public education for 36 years of service. By the way, he was able to go 31 years in retirement. At one time, we joked about he was trying to beat the system and last longer than he taught. He did not get overly excited about big social events, such as this one, as Donnie already said. This was not his idea. Overly excited is kind of a nice way of saying that. He simply didn't like big social events. But on the other hand, he was not antisocial by any means. He preferred small, comfortable, informal gatherings with friends and family around a campfire, which they had many, or in a cozy living room. He loved laughter. And what he called, well, at one time I heard him say my first midlife, but I'm going to call it his midlife. And what he called his midlife, he purchased several acres of land for retirement purposes in the northeast corner of California, near the city of Alturas. I once asked him, where is Alturas? What is it close to? He thought for a while, like, silence. And then he asked, well, have you heard of Goose Lake? The investment went well for several years until Pat informed him it would require a new wife. That might have been about the same time that he purchased a motorcycle and placed a sign in his garage stating, I may be growing old, but I refuse to grow up. He was an encourager. He was others-oriented. In a group setting, he often sought out people who appeared to be on the fringe and engaged them in conversation. He asked us about our children and grandchildren and often showed up at their games or events. Don and Pat walked the lonely walk with me after Jean died and made Janice very welcome in my remarriage. Although he was never widely acclaimed for his singing ability, he enjoyed singing the great Christian hymns of faith, one of which is in the back of your program, Like a River Glorious. During the hardest times, which we all had, and Don was not exempt from that, during the hardest times and the most joyful times, Don almost always maintained the even keel of life, not too high, not too low. In moments like we are in as I speak, he would relish the hymn of Horatio Spafford, "It is well with my soul." I wish I could sing that. I thought I might try whistling that, both of which, when I tried before Janice, she vetoed. But I think I can say, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Don cherished the community of silence, such as fishing for trout in a lake or a stream in a beautiful wilderness area showing God's creation. And he taught that to his children, the love of the out-there-ness, the beauty of God's creation. For years, he was a very popular but humble adult Bible teacher here at Rose Drive Friends Church. His life and his attitude toward telling people about Christ was that of St. Francis of Assisi. Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. He loved you, Pat. He loved all the children, great-grandchildren, grandchildren, sitting right here. He prayed for you daily. He was strong in weak places because he would identify an area of personal weakness and confront it. He loved the Bible. He studied the Bible. He read the Bible. He taught the Bible. There were many, as the family was gathering around to say what his favorite verse was. We found out that there really wasn't a favorite verse because there were a lot of favorite verses. I would like to share some of them with you, the three that I have chosen. Micah 6, Old Testament. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. You like the Psalm, Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. John 14:27 was one of his favorites. Peace I leave you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Be not afraid, let not your hearts troubled, and be not afraid. Don's parting words to me the last time I talked to him, and these are quotes for his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. Number one, keep the Shaffer family campfire burning. 2, remember your people. 3, the only thing achieved in life without effort is failure. My very last conversation with him, and he didn't speak much after this, I was talking to him and asking, I'm going to be speaking at that time. He knew I was. And Don, what is your legacy? What would you like for me to say before this group, which I did not think was going to be this big? And a testament to him. And he could barely talk at this time. He had to struggle with each word. Any good I had ever done was because of my faith in Jesus Christ. Don ran the good race. He went strongly into eternity.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura. I'm Don and Pat's daughter. Stop. That was beautiful, Rich. Kind of hard to follow, but I'll probably read more than I intended, so here goes. As you can tell from the video, we camped a lot growing up. So a lot of my memories revolve around the high Sierras, so it always makes me smile when parallels are drawn to camping or being outdoors. It speaks to my soul. It makes me realize again that nothing's all that random. Campfires. I remember watching a movie with my folks a few years ago, and one of the quotes was from a crusty old cowboy, and he said to the main character, "You're welcome around my campfire anytime." And that became such a code for my dad and I through the next several years, and you know, until his last conversation with you, Rich, about a campfire and how meaningful that was to all of us. I always felt welcome in his world, and he was always welcome in mine. We have a fire pit in our backyard now, and I love to sit around it with my daughter and my grandchildren and my son-in-law. And we actually did this a couple of weeks ago, and as the sparks flew off, my grandchildren would say, "There's Grandpa." And it was awesome because Dad had just passed away right recently after that. So I can never sit around a campfire again without thinking of my dad. My journey has taken me on quite a few twists and turns that I'm sure gave my dad a lot of angst, and I'm quite certain I gave him ample opportunities to pray extra hard, plus opportunities for journaling. My dad was journaling before journaling was cool. Those books will now be a heritage and reminder of some Shaffer family history, and it'll be interesting to see my dad's insights into the lives of those he loved so dearly and so well. They will be a reminder of a man of great faith who always wanted the very best for his family. I'm eternally grateful for parents that always did their best, their very best, to create a safe and loving place to walk this road. Even in the times when I was making decisions I knew were best for me, and knowing I was stepping outside the box of what might have been expected of me, I always did so knowing that although my dad might not understand, he would love me through to the other side and beyond. We all know by now, by listening to Rich and the videos and just by knowing him, my dad was basically an introvert, and I'm happy and proud to carry those genes. I think it gave us a special bond because the conversation never needed to be constant, but just by being together and sometimes just experience some soul-centering activities, it was enough and it was good. So to my dad, I'd like to thank you for helping me know that life is not about the mountains, it's the walking in between. I'm grateful for your company the past 58 years of my walk, and I look forward to feeling you with me still, even as the path leads me home.
Hi, it really is it was so beautiful and humbling today to stand here and see so many faces from my history as a child growing up here at this church, and I feel like it just speaks so much to the testament of Grandma and Grandpa, your faithfulness to this place and to creating community and to this whole group of people that I'm beyond touched. It was in this same room that my husband and I had our wedding rehearsal dinner, and we had everybody stand up to see who'd been married the longest. And It was 13 years ago, and at that point, I think Grandma and Grandpa came in second place, right after Grandpa's brother and Doris. So they both gave us a little piece of wisdom about what to do to maintain a happy marriage, and I think Grandpa's wisdom for me was to let Steve do whatever he wanted to. So I've done my best. I've done my best to live up to that, but earlier that day, and it was in the video also, I had asked Grandpa if he would share a prayer of blessing at our wedding, and as I've been trying to think through the things that I most want to remember and the things that Grandpa would most want me to remember, these are the things that do keep coming back to me. He said, "There's an element of foolishness in giving your grandpa a microphone or a chance to speak, but there's also an element of wisdom." And he said, this is similar to what's in the program. He said, God gave us a family and God gave us friends. And he said in the bridal party and the congregation here, and I'd say these relationships and these friends and these people here are examples of the people that are ready to put frosting onto your cake. God gave us his son that made us right with God and ready for heaven, and God gave us his spirit so that we could have peace and power and purpose to face the problems that may come your way. And then he asked for a moment to ask God's blessing on Steve and I's marriage, and I think that they're the words that I will carry with me always from my grandpa, and I think that as I've been thinking through what he would have me share today, that's what I wanted to relay. He said, help them, Lord, to respect the past, help them to rejoice in the present, and help them to be confident in the future. We ask this in your name and know that you will give us and them the strength to fulfill the purpose that you have for us. I love you, Grandpa. I miss you.
John Muir, famed naturalist of the Sierra Nevadas, once remarked, "The sun shines not on us, but in us." So I'd like to speak with you briefly about my grandpa's quiet light and his affection for a well-placed phrase of advice. He was a quiet and a thoughtful man that listened much and spoke little, but when he chose to weigh in on a subject, his responses were carefully thought out and spoke to the core of the situation. Grandpa's desire to reflect rather than immediately speak is something I've inherited from him, and it's one of my favorite parts about myself. In his later years, we both got a great deal of enjoyment, just sitting quietly in the living room, each ruminating on our thoughts, interspersed with the occasional exchange of opinions and ideas still being formed. Some of my most positive memories of him is the lack of expectation during these times. We were free to get lost in our own thoughts without the pressure of having to speak. And at the same time, we were able to speak freely if we felt called to do so, and these conversations would be in-depth and lively. Much like John Muir, Grandpa fancied himself a bit of a poet of nature. An adage often shared with me, especially given that my name is Brooke, was "The brook would lose its song if God removed the rocks." Like most children and young adults going through adversity, I would rail against the world around me, feeling frustrated and alone, and beaten down, I would lament about my struggles to himself, my family, my close friends. And Grandpa's gentle reminder to be malleable was the reflective energy I needed to see it from a different side. I learned to be open to the changes that struggle brings, and to let it form me into a more compassionate person so that I can call out my song even when I feel like hiding away. To this day, when I face difficulty, I am reminded that the rocks do indeed make the melodious bubble of the stream, and I consider that perspective on adversity to be one of my greatest strengths as I continue to mature. When I'm alone and I'm daydreaming of the quiet solace of nature, I'm taken away to my childhood and the thick smell of ponderosa pine on the air, the gleam of trout in the lake, and the sharp, jagged, snow-capped peaks on the horizon. No matter if I'm in the rough terrain of my native Sierra Nevadas or the sandy scrub flatlands of my adopted Florida, I feel as if John Muir must have felt nearly a century ago when he wrote, "When one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world." And today, looking at all of you, I am reminded that while the earthly absence of Grandpa is keenly felt by so many, his reminders of wisdom and love remain very much attached in this world through our kind deeds, our generous actions, and the beauty of the natural world that surrounds us. It's truly a privilege to be here today, to remember and honor one of the most loving, humble, wise, and incredible men I have known, and that I have the privilege to call my grandpa. In the days following Grandpa's change of address, as Grandma posted after he passed away, I reflected on Grandpa's life, and I read hundreds of comments from many of you in this room about words and phrases describing Grandpa, and some of the repeated ones that stuck out to me and rang so true were these: humble, well-respected, a gentleman, loved the Lord, my favorite teacher, consistent, a great sense of humor, wise, gentle, always wearing a smile, a good counselor, faithful, kind, a good friend, genuine, a godly example. And they were really all summed up in this phrase that was repeated: a life well lived. Grandpa impacted countless people's lives, especially mine. Grandpa and Grandma were incredibly intentional in spending quality time with us and creating memories, especially to us grandchildren, the big five. I'll always remember, just as you guys were able to see in that slideshow, our cousin camping weeks at Newport Dunes, the annual Christmas tree and cookie decorating parties, which amazingly has lived on to Grandpa and Grandma's great-grandchildren. So our kids have had the opportunity to sit around their great-grandpa and great-grandma's kitchen table and decorate sugar cookies that Grandma's made. I remember going to the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus, going to Norco to Aunt Laura's house and sitting on Grandpa's lap on that riding lawnmower, staying overnight at their house when Dad and Mom were out of town, and my favorite was Grandpa picking me up from school in my favorite car of his many cars that he loved cars, but my favorite was that VW Bug. And of course, there was many meals shared together, especially a chili dog at Wiener Schnitzel, or chips and salsa and a 1 enchilada meal at the Whole Enchilada. Although, honestly, I don't even know if Grandpa liked Mexican food. But it was my favorite, so to him it didn't matter. He always put others above himself, and really it wasn't about the food to him at all. It was the quality time together and the conversations to be shared. Grandpa would always ask questions and want to know how I was doing. He genuinely cared about me and wanted to know about my life, what was new, and how he could be praying for me. Grandpa truly was a man of prayer. Just this morning I was reading through one of his prayer journals, and he put in there that he felt like God had given him a ministry of prayer. He had prayer lists, prayer journals, and I'm so thankful for his example as a grandpa who not only loved, cared, and provided for our family, but he prayed for each one of us by name daily. And this is one of the greatest gifts he gave me. And he prayed for me because he knew, trusted, and believed in the God he was praying to, our great and faithful God. Looking back, I realize I've learned so much about God and faith and church community and following Jesus from the example and life of my Grandpa Don. I absolutely love that many of you here in this room have walked alongside my grandparents as friends for over 50 years. I hope and pray that I can continue to grow deep, God-honoring friendships that last for decades to come. As I get ready this year to celebrate 1 decade of marriage to my husband, I want to continue to learn from the example of Grandpa and Grandma's marriage of 66 years. That's amazing, Grandma. I want to still be loving, honoring, and enjoying life and family alongside of my spouse in the years we have ahead. I love seeing and continuing to hear the stories about just the humble impact that Grandpa made on so many lives. As we've said, Grandpa was more on the quiet side, but you knew that when he shared, his words were just dripping with wisdom and love and truth. I'm so thankful for the countless conversations I had with Grandpa, especially the ones sitting out on one of his favorite places, his patio. I'm thankful for the many afternoons spent on that patio, and especially for my last visit at the end of January, that I was able to actually talk about many of these memories with Grandma and Grandpa and thank him for being the amazing Grandpa he has been to me. Grandpa was one of the most intentional men I have known, and I feel like I'm getting to realize that by the day as we read things that he's written and read through his journals. So on my birthday, I always loved and looked forward to receiving my birthday card, because Grandma and you had carefully picked out the card, but Grandpa had very thoughtfully written words in it, and they were always maybe just a simple truth, but it was always profound and encouraging. Lindsay and I sat yesterday looking through letters and things he had written throughout the years, and I was just blown away as I reread one of the letters that he had sent to us 5 grandchildren 25 years ago. But he was sharing 10 thoughts that had enabled him and Grandma to be confident, content, and enjoy the years that God had given them. And he had been so intentional to write us this letter, encouraging us to evaluate each thought, that we could agree, somewhat agree, or disagree with any of these thoughts, but to evaluate them and apply them to our own lives so that we would make the most of the years God would give each one of us. I want to learn from my grandpa's example and be more intentional with my own children and the other people God has placed in my life. In closing, I wanted to share the words from a rendition of a wonderful hymn, Rock of Ages. Rock of Ages, no one takes your life, yet you died that I might live. Costly grace you freely give. And while I draw my final breath, I'll rest upon your grace. And when I close my eyes in death, I'll wait to see your face. Though I miss Grandpa so much here on earth, I know with confidence that he's with Jesus, the rock of his life and the rock that holds through the ages. Grandpa was ready to die. He was ready to be with Jesus in heaven because he knew he wasn't actually going from life to death, but he was ultimately going from death to true eternal life because of the death and resurrection of Jesus for him and for me and for you. My prayer for myself and for everyone here, whether we're 7 or whether we were 92 like Grandpa, is that like my grandpa, we would live our lives well until our final breath, genuinely loving and caring for others and walking humbly with our faithful God.
Shaffer, and I married the other brother. I'm going to keep this short, and it's going to be short like the time that Don and Pat found each other and the time they got engaged. What was that, Monday to Friday? Close. Barney and I were students at Azusa, and we were dating, and he asked me to come home to Yorba Linda to meet his family. And so we got in his 35 Ford or whatever it was and drove to Yorba Linda. And the reason I'm going to tell you this about Don is because some of you call him Grandpa, and some of you call him Dad, and some of you only know him as an old man. But I met him as a kid. He was still a kid. And actually about a couple weeks before Pat met him. And so I have I would like to share my memory of Don and being a young guy. And so we got in the car and we drove over to Yorba Linda, up to Park Place, and pulled in there. And here was Don on the lawn, washing his car in his 501 jeans, no shirt, no shoes, and he had red hair. And my response was, wowie zowie. Actually, he had me assured sometime before that other picture there where he was kind of skinny. But anyway, he was really a good-looking guy. And shortly after that, Pat met him, and we dated together, double dated, and did some things together, really fun. Don was a fun guy to be with. And so I just want to say to you, young people, when you look around the room here and you see older people that have lived their life, remember that all of the people that you're seeing there were young once too.
On Tuesday, we had the privilege of the United States of America honoring dead. And this is the flag from that ceremony. And that was a special time. Thank you to Don Marshberg for leading that time out there. That was great. You've heard about his journals. He wrote in his journal a couple different places, hundreds of places. But he said, surround yourself with the right people. Not always just the bigwigs, but the right people. He didn't go out and totally and say who those right people were, but I think he knew and we know. In his journal, he had a list of 100+ names of people that had influenced him. Many of those people have passed. Many of you are sitting here right now. He took the positives from virtually every relationship to strengthen his own life. It was quite a varied group. There was Pearl Green, his high school football coach, that taught him how to bite players. No. But Pearl Green, his dad said, he put me back there to return kickoffs 12 times in one game. It was a 77-0 loss. He said, I loved every play. You heard about that 4th grade class, that first class. One of the members of that class, he's here today. 1950, he was in the 4th grade. He's now only 39 years old. But on that list, Tommy and his brother brought a baseball, rode on their bikes from Placentia over to Fullerton when I was born. I wish I could say this is the baseball. Used that one up way long ago. People like Gary Madison, Rich, Dad, and Gary. If we just would have listened, I think the world would be a better place. Within that, also, he had another list of 35 or so people, and this is who he prayed for daily. And for the last 3 or 4 years, when he quit teaching, I think he was doing this before, but particularly quit teaching, he got this ministry of prayer. And this list of 35, once you were on it, you were on it. You never went off. It included people that were in his life daily, people that had been in his life before, had seemingly gone, but he kept praying every day for all of us that were on that list of 35 or so people. His prayer that was God would keep them, bless them, guide them, and protect them. One of the things I pulled out of one of those journals is he wrote, "It gives me great pleasure to be a part of their lives in this way." Dad encouraged all of us to get involved in music, that we should enjoy music. It wasn't an essential part of his life. You'll notice there's no praise band here today. No, don't applaud. Because actually we can get enough of the grandkids up and we can put one together. He was part of putting this service together. And there's a song that we're going to sing in a few minutes that he requested. After the song, Greg Anderson, a friend and his hospice chaplain, is going to come and close. A couple weeks, my dad kind of had some of these rote prayers that he would say. And he had a line that he would close many prayers with: "For those whom we should pray." Again, he was a lot brighter than some of us. Maybe that was just a good line. But a couple weeks during one of his last meals, Mom and we were sitting there and said, "Let's pray before this meal," and said, "Dad, do you want to pray?" And he did. It was an incredible prayer that summarized what was essential to him. Before we sing this song, listen to Dad's prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for times of being together. Thank you, Lord, for the people in our lives that have influenced us. Thank you for dying on the cross. May we live worthy of accepting your sacrifice and the life that comes with that. We praise you for your mercy and grace, and thank you for your sacrifice that will allow us to be in heaven with you. I praise your holy name. Amen." Let's sing together. The words are on the back of your program. Like a river glorious. Like a river glorious is God's perfect peace. Over all victorious in His bright increase. Perfect yet it floweth, fuller every day.
time for all of us. And I had the privilege of being a young, inexperienced pastor from out of state in 1982 and coming up to the office and seeing Pat, who was definitely in charge, along with her cohort Kathy Gebler, and just began to get to know people from the church and Don and Pat. And the whole clan, some of you who I knew for a long time, has been a rich blessing to me. And of course, it was a few years later, like Pat, she loves to organize future marriages and other things like that. So I can, and some other folks, and that was a blessing to me to marry the senior pastor's youngest daughter. So it's been fun to be a part of that. And I always remember Don and Pat, they loved to linger. And that's where they really touched your hearts. They often came early, stayed late, and just like those stories, Don would hang around the side and have a rich and fun, delightful, or meaningful conversation with so many of us. And I remember one of those little ones, thinking about ministry and wondering if I would last or how long I could do it. And I remember a couple gems, and this is one I thought I would quickly share. He had a great heart, some great insight. He said, remember, if most of the people in church can like about 70% of what's going on, that's probably about as good as it gets. And he said, the challenge is everybody likes a different 70%. That has stuck with me for decades. It's wise. And then just these last few months being on hospice, that's about my new ministry role, and being able to see Pat and Dawn in a more intimate setting again. And he said, Greg, I don't want to talk about dying. This is life. I still have hopes, people I'm praying for. And sometimes it would be quiet, and sometimes hear a story. And one time when Pat was out shopping, doing some errands, and just Don and I were there. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Barney and I. So, here's a little boy. He said one time when Barney was going through a low spot in his life, I decided to take him up in an airplane. And I thought, wow, that's cool. And he said, I want you to encourage him to see life from a different perspective. And that's real practical. And that's the way he was. And then he said some wisdom about aging. He said, as you get older, you see life from a different perspective, and things come into focus better. So I've had lots of gems. I got a great gem right at the end there. And we've all lost a good friend. So let's pray. Father, thank you for every good and perfect gift that you bestow upon our life. Thank you for the gift of Don, his love, his friendship, his example. Thank you for allowing him to have the family that he had, and for crossing paths with Pat, and raising their family in your ways, and sharing their love of one another and of family, and their devotion and love for you that has been an example to students in schools and so many through the years here at Rose Drive Friends. And we do thank you for his life as we thank you for the life of our Savior, whose hope and victory we celebrated just last weekend. We are rich people because of Don and Pat and their family, and we thank you for that. Lord, I thank you that you and you alone know the day and the hour of our final calling, and that you, Lord, have Don safely at home now. We believe that you died and you rose again, and we too can experience that same reality as we trust in you, just as Don did. And so as Christ surrendered his life to you, and Don did so many years ago, in a new and fresh way, we surrender our lives to you as best we know how. May Don's life, his lessons, his wisdom, his legacy linger in our hearts and minds. And thank you, God, that we do not walk alone, through life, and the family does not walk alone through this grief. Draw near to them and be their God of comfort. Bless them and encourage them, and draw near to them. And help our time of remembrance to go beyond the walls of this place and be an influence for others around us like Don's life was. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you so much for being here to celebrate with us. Your love is astounding. Thank you to the Rose Drive Friends Church and the staff for providing the setup and all of this, the Discover Sunday School class with the freshmen. Thank you for coming. Mom, if you stay right there, nobody's going to be able to get to you. And maybe you like that. Yeah. If you didn't sign the guest book, please sign. But why don't you guys move over there so people can... What's that? Where would you like to go? You want to go over there? This is a test. Who's going to go over to see Mom and who's going to go over to the cookies? Okay. Good. Thank you for being here. Thank you.